This tweet from Roxane Gay is legitimately ruining my whole month. I don't know. The rabbit hole I just went down after learning why morgues prefer to hire women. SMH, shaking my head. Put men in rice.
Welcome back to Unbiased and Unbossed. I'm back here today with a topic that doesn't get as much discussion as it should, considering that we know that there is an SA problem in the United States of America. Roxane Gay sent out the following tweet last month that read, "The rabbit hole I just went down after learning why morgues prefer to hire women. Shake my head, put me in rice." This led to a series of tweets and even some TikTok videos being created, which I'm going to show towards the end of the video. However, if you imagine that the reason why morgues prefer to hire women is because of the SAN problem, you are correct. And it has a name. It's called necrophilia, which is defined as obsession with and usually erotic interest in or stimulation by corpses. One of the worst cases that happened here in America happened in Hamilton County, Ohio. In August of 1982, Sue Karen Raines was murdered and had her throat slit by David Steffen, who was a door-to-door soap salesman at the time when he visited the Raines' family house in suburban Cincinnati and forced his way inside. David admitted to the police in a recorded statement that he beat, stabbed, and killed Raines. He also told them that he attempted to SA her, but could not get an erection. Later, he was unable to explain why semen had been found inside of Raines' body, who was reported to be a virgin. Based on that evidence alone, in 1983, a jury decided that Steffen had lied about the SA of Raines and recommended he should face the death penalty. In 2008, however, DNA evidence matched Kenneth Douglas, who was an Ohio County morgue worker at the time, to the semen found inside of Raines' body. Douglas, who was now 62, admitted that he had raped Raines' corpse in the Hamilton County morgue about 4 hours after her remains were brought in from the crime scene. Douglas admitted to raping over 100 corpses of females during his time as a morgue worker, which was from 1976 to 1992. Kenneth's wife, Pat Chavez, said she tried to contact someone about her husband's behavior, but she was dismissed.
Pat Chavez was married to Ken Douglas. She warned both Kursker and Maratea that Ken Douglas was drinking at work and that he came home smelling like sex.
So you called Bernie Kursker in 87.
Yep.
And tell me, as best you can recall, exactly what you told him.
I told Bernie, I said, "Bernie, I think that Kenny's having some problems." And he said, "What do you mean, Pat?" And I said, "Kenny's coming home, straight from work, and he's smelling like booze." And he said, "What do you mean smelling like booze?" I said, "He smells like he's been drinking." He said, "Well, maybe he's stopping off." I said, "Bernie, I called him at work, and he came straight home. It took him 15 minutes. I called the morgue. It took him 15 minutes to get home. And he smelled like booze. Unless he had something in the car, then he was drinking there. And he was too intoxicated to get drunk that fast." And Bernie said, "You know what, Pat, I'll look into it."
How long had it been going on by the time you called Mr. Kursker?
By the time I called Bernie, it had been well over a year. But it wasn't happening every week. It wasn't happening every month. It was periodically.
Bernie Kursker did not do anything after this warning, so Pat Chavez called Bernie again.
Did you tell Mr. Kursker on the second time you called him about the drinking?
Yes.
What did you say?
I told him, I said, "He's still drinking. You told me you would talk to him, and you haven't." I said, "Because I've asked Kenny, and Kenny said to stay out of his business. So I'm calling you, and I'm telling you, the drinking hasn't stopped." I said, "But the thing that is really gotten me bothered right now," and I said, "is he's coming home smelling like sex."
So that's what you told Mr. Kursker?
Yeah.
That Mr. Douglas was coming home smelling like sex?
Yes.
And what did Mr. Kursker say?
He said, why do you think he's coming home smelling like sex?" And I told him, I said, "We're down to one car. more often than not, I'm dropping Kenny off and I'm picking him up. And I'm taking him home. He gets undressed and he reeks of pussy. I'm sorry, excuse me. And that's the way I said it. And Bertie said, Pat, whatever happens on county property and county time is county business. You're an insecure, jealous wife, and I don't want you to call here anymore. And he hung up on me.
Kursker admitted talking to Pat Chavis and admitted telling her not to call back, but claimed not to remember any more about their conversations.
I'm trying to remember. Pat called. I know that. I remember that name, Pat. But I don't remember. No, I don't remember ever saying anything about his drinking. She wanted to get a hold of him, tell that so-and-so to call me and this and that. I'd say, look, don't call her anymore. But that's just what it was all about. I never got into his personal life.
Pat Chavis also warned Carol Maratea about Douglas having sex at the morgue.
The next day I called Carol. I said, your secretary is calling my house. I said, I know that Kenny's having relationships. And I know that he comes home smelling like sex. I said, I don't know if it's your secretary or not. I said, it may be somebody he's bringing in at night. I don't know. I said, but I want it to stop. I want to save my marriage. And she said that she would look into it.
But the abuse didn't stop. Ken Douglas molested the women at the morgue at night and on the weekends. Kursker and Maratea continued to assign him to work alone on nights and weekends, and they just did not investigate his behavior.
I wasn't there at nighttime. I don't know what happened, what they did at night.
Ken Douglas says that he abused the women when he was high.
It wasn't like whenever everybody came in, I would know it would. It wasn't like that. It was. I would be, if I wasn't high, I put it like this. If I wasn't drinking, or I hadn't had anything to drink when I went to work, it wouldn't happen. Or I would do crack and go in, and I would drink and go in. And I wouldn't care. I wouldn't care if I got caught or what. But if I hadn't had anything, no drugs or no booze, no.
Multiple bodies were exhumed and tested for Douglas DNA. Kenneth admitted to having sex with the bodies of April Hicks, Karen Range, and Charlene Appling. Just like Range, Appling was a murder victim. Side note, Charlene was 6 months pregnant with a baby boy when she was strangled to death on October 1st, 1991 by Mark Chambers. Mark originally was charged with murder, but accepted a plea bargain and was convicted of voluntary manslaughter and sent to prison for 10 to 25 years. He was paroled in 2000 after serving only 9 years. In 2015, he strangled Tina Bond to death, just like Charlene. When asked about the body of Appling, Douglas said, I do remember going into the freezer, pulling her in one of the rooms in the back, and having sex with her. Douglas was convicted of gross abuse of a corpse and sentenced to 3 years in prison for each corpse. In February of 2015, Hamilton County reached a settlement with the families of those who were raped post-mortem. The county agreed to pay $800,000. This is why morgues prefer to hire women over men. After seeing this tweet, a social media user made a video on TikTok expressing her disdain and sadness. Since then, several people have come forward and made their own videos expressing their knowledge and feelings on necrophilia. I'm going to show you their responses and come back with my final thoughts.
This tweet from Roxane Gay is legitimately ruining my whole month. I don't know. The rabbit hole I just went down after learning why morgues prefer to hire women. SMH, shaking my head, put men in rice. And then somebody else tweeted, if you saw my face when I found out the reason that female mummies are usually more decomposed than male mummies. Same root cause. They waited longer to embalm. They've been needing to put men in rice for a while. Y'all, Don't Google if you don't understand why. And if you think you understand why, you're probably correct. People need help.
Yeah, unfortunately, what Roxane Gay has discovered is something that religions stemming something like 2,000 to 4,000 years have already baked in rules because of the necrophilia and of the wanton disregard of bodies, predominantly violations done by men to not male bodies. So, for example, in Islam and Judaism, there are same-sex rituals that happen so that both out of respect and in line with those religions' understandings of modesty, but also, if you read all the legalistic history, because they are trying to protect that dead body from the not dead men. So as a good story, when I was a kid, we had a death in the family and we needed to figure out who was going to guard the body all night, which is a thing in Judaism. Bodies need to be buried within 24 to 48 hours. And it's a place of honor and a rite of passage, but also a mitzvah, one of the most important things you can do in Judaism, to both guard the body and wash the body. And that needs to be done by same sex. Though today, as some of the trans rabbis that I'm learning from talk about, same gender is also part of the equation. So same sex would be biological or like assigned at birth stuff, and same gender would be more in line with person's identity. Anyway, during those the tahara is what it's called. I was asking the rabbi, like, why my mom and grandma could be the only person helping my great aunt to death and the women of the community. And, like, I wasn't old enough yet to join because you need to be full adult in the community. The rabbi is giving all these, like, theological reasons, right? Like, it's about the soul and ushering them in this way and protecting them and making sure that there's someone watching and honoring the body. And my grandmother, who must have been 90, my bubby, is like, yeah, Rabbi, that's all well and good, but the real reason is that men are schmucks and you know it. So you just made the laws to protect the women. Bubby. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't like the first conversation we had about consent. And also one of the first times my grandmother just full on was like, it doesn't matter what you wear. Men are disgusting. So yeah, I'm with Roxane Gay. Men need to be put on rice. Sorry about it.
The rabbit hole I just went down after learning why morgues prefer to hire women, shaking my head, put men in rice. I'm gonna need my teddy bear for this one. Yeah, you heard that right. Necrophilia is a big problem in morgues across the world. One example is this guy, David Fuller, a mortician who assaulted more than 100 deceased female bodies ranging from age 9 to 100. But it happens all across the world. And it's not new. In ancient Egypt, women would guard a deceased female in their family for 3 or 4 days before giving them over to the embalmers. It's why we don't see a lot of female mummies. So yeah, we're never safe. Not even in death.
What the fuck? The rabbit hole I just went down after learning why morgues prefer to hire women, shaking my head, put men in rice? Oh my god, what are the men doing? What are they doing? This could just be a random post on Twitter, but the fact that this is an institutional thing for morgues across the board to prefer hiring women over men because there is a certain behavior that men do, I almost feel like I know what they're doing, but God please say it can't be so. Men are the ones who you see out and about in society, acting normal, acting okay, but the second that one of them gets in front of pussy, they start acting weird, coked out, oh my god, pussy. They lose their sense. But are you telling me that this behavior isn't limited to live pussy? What are you saying? Speak English. What are these men doing? And don't be like, oh my god, it could just be like a one-off, like 1 or 2. It's looking like this is something across the board, sister. What are these guys doing? Put the men in rice. I just went down after learning why morgues prefer to hire women.
Oh, what's even grosser is how they catch these guys all the time. And it's because these guys will still go on dates with alive women. But because they've been doing the hanky-panky in the morgue with the corpses, they have like a fungal infection on their junk or in their mouth that you can only get from corpses. And then if the date goes well with whatever alive woman they've decided to take out and things get hot and heavy, they pass that fungal infection onto their partner. And then the woman is like, oh, I have to go to the doctor. I regret screwing that guy. And then they go to the doctor runs tests, and it's like, oh, you can only get this from corpses. What have you been doing? And she's like, I've been doing that guy. And then they go and arrest that guy.
What the fuck? What the fuck? The rabbit hole I just went down after learning why morgues prefer to hire...
Yeah, so someone quoted that tweet and actually said that they had slept with a guy and they thought they got an STD. Come to find out they got a disease that you can only get from having sex with.
What the fuck? The rabbit hole I just went down after learning why morgues prefer to hire women shake...
All I can comment on that is that historically there is a reason women were ahead of certain things for a very, very long time. They were in charge of child rearing, not only as mothers, but also as governesses, teachers, nannies, that kind of thing, but also taking care of the infirmed or the elderly as nurses or nuns. Also, in most cultures, women were ahead of burials, with the exceptions of some cultures, but a lot of Western cultures, women were ahead of burials for the longest time. And also midwifery. Don't forget midwifery. We were all brought up to believe it was because, women were just seen as people who take care of people. Makes sense. That's partly true. The other part was that men couldn't be trusted around vulnerable populations.
I sent my mom a screenshot of that Twitter thread, along with a screenshot of the Dear Abby column that someone wrote in saying, my daughter just married a man who works in a funeral home and is a necrophiliac, and she didn't find out until their wedding night, and she panicked, left the hotel room, got a different room in the hotel, and called me and her father in distress and panic and not knowing what to do, and she's terrified. And Dear Abby was like, yeah, that guy is sick. Here's the address of the National Association of Funeral Home Directors or something. You should report him to his professional organization because he's disgusting and he needs to be out of that business. My mother's response was, just goes to show you how sick men can be. And then something occurred to me. Here's the problem. I texted back. The industry has responded by hiring women mostly to work in morgues and funeral homes. And they have this preference precisely for this reason. Because men are graping the corpses. They are having sex with the corpses of women. They can't be trusted to be in the same room alone with a dead body for an extended period of time without having sex with it. We're told, don't walk alone at night, don't put your headphones in, don't get too drunk at parties, watch your drink all the time, blah, blah, blah. Men are disgusting and can't be trusted to not, fuck the corpses. Let's just hire women for these jobs. We never really seem to directly address why. And if we don't address why and hold men accountable, the problem will never go away. We just come up with all these workarounds to compensate for the fact that the majority of men can't be trusted not to sexually assault women even after they're dead. There is something wrong with the culture. There's something wrong. This heteropatriarchy, whatever. And I felt like it seemed like it was getting better for a while, but now with all the rolling back of everything in the United States, it feels like it's getting worse.
Morgues are even coming out saying some don't hire men. Morgues! Female mummies are generally found in a worse state because they were kept in-house longer before being given to embalmers, because this had been an issue from the beginning of times. It took 6 hours for Marilyn Monroe's body to reach the morgue, and that journey should have only taken 45 minutes. I wonder why it took so long. This person interned with a forensic pathologist, and they were helping with the autopsy of the body of a young woman who OD'd. The paramedic had some concerning things to say about her body, and apparently this is pretty common amongst paramedics and firefighters. Not all men, but somehow always a man.
So Roxane Gay tweeted that she just found out why mortuaries and things prefer to hire women. It's because men grape dead bodies, and apparently this is like a whole thousands-year-old field of research. And this man, says, oh, if you go read the replies and comments, it's full of news articles and personal stories. And I just found out that Marilyn Monroe's body, after she committed suicide, went missing for several hours. After it had been put in the Emmy's office. I can't. They're horrible. They're horrible. This is why I come on this app every day and just talk about why they're trash, because every time I start thinking, well, maybe it's me, maybe there are good ones, maybe they aren't all trash, I read stuff like this and there's just really nothing to say. Even when you pass away, you still have to fear for your body because they're not human. I mean, they must be monsters or something, because who would assault a dead body? It's so much. It's really a lot. They walk among us, otherwise normal-looking people.
Okay, there was one incident where a woman got pregnant from a necrophilic act. But for the majority of history, it's been the guys that have been doing the bad stuff. And so much so that in Egyptian times, where men were basically put through the mummification process right away, they would let the female bodies start to rot to dissuade the priests that would do the mummification and burial rites process from, doing stuff to the bodies.
Not so fun fact, a lot of people have been talking about Anne Boleyn and her ladies in waiting who carried her body away from the execution site because they knew that the men would be unkind to their lady's body. But also, historically in antiquity, when they were finding mummies in Egypt, they were discovering that the women's bodies were in a more decomposed state before mummification than the men's, and that was because they let the women's bodies were kept by their families and allowed to decompose a bit before they were taken to the priests and to the mummifiers to be mummified. Yeah. I maintain that women should have been left to keep charge of the dead. Historically, it was a woman's job. That's how it always was. When a person died, the women in the family or in the tribe or the group or the town or the whatever would handle the body. They would wash them, prepare them, get them ready, wrap them in their shroud, prepare everything for the wake, the funeral, all that. The Civil War is what brought men to the forefront of handling the dead and being morticians and handling things like that in the United States. And that was where they started pushing women out of the way and being like, oh, well, the women, they can't do this. We have to preserve the bodies now. And it kind of just opened the door for creeps to come in and have access to bodies. Access to bodies that don't fight back, talk back. Sadly, the mortuary profession gets a bad rap. People always think they're creeps. I mean, there are creeps out there, don't get me wrong. But as a woman, I would much rather have a woman handle me than a man.
It's exactly what you think. We're not even safe when we're dead. It's a damn shame. Allow me to save you the misery. Don't look that up. It's exactly what you think.
This just goes to show you that black women, or women overall, are not safe in life or in death. Imagine being the parents of one of these individuals and knowing that not only was your child recently unalived, but in their final moments before they were buried, they were sexually assaulted. And not only were they sexually assaulted, it was done by a man who had complaints raised against him by his own wife, and his superiors refused to do anything. Kenneth Douglas is disgusting, trifling, nasty, and he is a predator. He knew that these women could not give consent. And yes, you can sexually assault somebody when they're dead. Sexual assault is when you do not give consent. A dead person cannot give consent. It was even more troublesome to find out that Appling was 6 months pregnant, was strangled to death, and the person who committed that crime against her went to jail to only get out in 9 years. She didn't get any justice at all. 9 years is nothing. He then got out and killed another woman. I had to share those TikTok stories because I think they did a really good job of bringing in some more of the history of necrophilia. Get in the comment section. Tell me what you thought about this video. Thanks for watching.